All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, Crystal and I, we've spent a lot of time here talking about the collapse of the Russiagate story and focusing in particular on the immense damage that the story did to the political discourse on the right and left in America. It locked the nation into a set of policies that very few voters ever really desired, but which the moneyed interests certainly did. And that's why I couldn't help but laugh yesterday when I saw the true apotheosis of Russiagate on the left in the congressional candidacy of Evelyn Farkas. Now, Farkas is a former Obama administration defense official who made quite a dust-up in March 2017 with this MSNBC appearance, where she openly described how she encouraged her former colleagues to leak and spread information about so-called Russian collusion throughout the bureaucracy, claiming, quote, "I knew there was more." Let's take a listen to that in full.
Tell us about that. Well, I was urging my former colleagues and frankly speaking, the people on the Hill. It was more actually aimed at telling the Hill people, get as much information as you can, get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration, because I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear with the senior people who left. So it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy, that the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff's dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. So I became very worried because not enough was coming out into the open, and I knew that there was more.
Well, wouldn't you know it, Farkas was actually interviewed by the House Intelligence Committee, and after their transcripts were released, it was revealed she was asked about why exactly she knew more of what, but she couldn't speak of on MSNBC. Here's what she replied, quote, "I didn't know anything." And when asked to affirm the statement by Congressman Trey Gowdy, she replied once again, "That's correct." So there you have it. A former Obama administration defense official openly admitting to lying on MSNBC. And we could leave it there, and it would be funny enough, but it gets better. Farkas is now running for Congress, and after the release of the transcripts, has rightfully been called the conspiracy theorist that she is. Well, she is now using that criticism as the hook for a new op-ed in the Washington Post, writing that the attacks leveled against her, you guessed it, mirror Russian tactics. One of the best or better parts of that op-ed is when she points to how so-called forensic data shows that at least one of the Twitter accounts pointing out that her bald-faced lies were linked to Russia. Ergo, the criticism itself is irrelevant. Furthermore, because MSNBC is apparently unbothered by having a guest on their air blatantly lie about alleged state secrets, all of the criticism came from the right. So now it's a right-wing engineered Russian outrage plot, not a legitimate point of criticism against a former national security state official spouting an outright conspiracy theory on national television. And even better, after doubling down on the conspiracy theory in her insane Washington Post op-ed, Farkas is now using the opportunity of being attacked for being a liar as a fundraising ploy, proving once again that the only uniting force behind Biden's campaign and the Democratic Party in 2020 is being anti-Trump. They stand for nothing, and to the extent that they do stand for anything, it's bloodthirsty war with the Russian government for reasons that nobody has yet explained to me. Farkas' prominence in the Democratic Party and MSNBC's own complicity in touting her claims says something much deeper about the decline of discourse and reporting in 2020, which is Glenn Greenwald describes perfectly in a scathing new column. He says, quote, "By far the easiest path to career success over the last 3 years, booming ratings, lucrative book sales, exploding social media followings, career rehabilitation, even for the most discredited DC operatives, was to feed establishment liberals an endless diet of fear-mongering and inflammatory conspiracies about Trump and his White House. Whether it was true or supported by basic journalistic standards was completely irrelevant. Responsible reporting was simply not a metric used to assess its worth." So, Crystal, I mean, how perfect is that Evelyn Farkas? I mean, so not only does she lie on national television, she's admits to lying under oath to the House Intelligence Committee, writes an op-ed about how criticism of her is actually a Russian right-wing engineered plot, and then uses that to raise money off of the same establishment liberals I was talking about. I went and I looked.
Full service economy.
It really is. People were tweeting like, "Oh, Tucker Tucker Carlson and the Russians hate Evelyn, so please donate to her now. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. What does this woman stand for other than literally, like I said, other than like war with Russia? Is that what they want? If they do, say it. I guarantee you're going to lose the election by a landslide. Nobody wants that.
She stands for her own careerism, obviously. I mean, and she's far from the only one. There was an assumption, which I think was reasonable for the public to make, that some of these people who had come from the Obama administration, who had been in the intelligence community, that they had information that they couldn't fully divulge to the public, but that showed there was more going on with Russiagate than met the eye. And so they looked at people like Clapper and Brennan and like this person and said, oh, well, they know the real like intelligence, like the deep secrets of what's really going on, and it's all going to be exposed, and it's just a matter of time before Mueller comes out with it, or, you know, the journalists we trust come out with it, et cetera, et cetera. And so she and others like her were completely complicit in an outrageous and unconscionable way in misleading the public that lasted for years. I mean, this is the foundations upon which Russiagate was built. They're elevated as trusted voices. They allude to, or directly, I mean, she directly said, I know that there was more. Like, that's the part that was just a lie. And there's never any accountability. There's never any soul searching. There's no going back and saying, you know what, you all really misled us. We took your word for it. Like, even if journalistic, you know, when journalists wanted to sort of distance themselves from it, they could at least say, look, you guys lied to us. What's up with that? But no, because they all continue to get juice out of it. Every new story is a new way of saying, oh, what's Russia's involvement? I mean, we saw this last week when Burr was facing, you know, had his phone seized for potential trading based on non-public information. Somehow that got spun into like Russia, he's been tough on Trump on Russia, and that's why he's being targeted. No, he's being targeted because it looks shady as hell, and like he probably broke the law. That's what is supposed to happen. That's not being targeted. And so that sort of brainworms that has just infected the entirety of the Democratic Party leads to a completely hollow, substanceless shell that sees conspiracy around every single corner and collapses down to nothing more than like, Trump is bad, must beat Trump because he's a traitor, because Russia. And there was never any reflection on any of this, which is how she can get away with being like, Putin wants me to lose, so send me some money.
I bet
people will do it.
I bet it works.
Yeah.
I bet it works well.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing, too. I mean, Brennan, Clapper, Brennan in particular. I mean, these people are liars. They lied on national television over and over. They knew there was more. We saw this. We saw that. I mean, and it got to the point where at least some journalists, after the release of the Mueller report, were like, hey, you know,
what's
Brennan,
up with this?
You got some explaining to do, my friend.
How about Clapper? I mean, these are the people that have become resistance icons. Clapper lied to us about NSA data collection blatantly and had to apologize. I mean, blatantly lied to, and then these are the people that we've like lifted up as resistance heroes who are going to stand in opposition to President Trump and are going to bring him down. And meanwhile, and this is the thing for me, is like, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't want him to be in a position right now where he could potentially win re-election. But because they focused on this insanity for years, like this was the entirety of the case against Donald Trump, segment after segment, night after night after night, they didn't focus on the other things that he was doing. And why? Because a lot of it they wanted to be complicit in, or their hands were dirty from previous times and previous administrations.
I mean, for mine, they crippled the administration for the first 2 years, basically made it, for so much of what has not been done, a lot of it is Trump's fault. A lot of it is this too, is that it just completely removed the space in order to pursue any sort of détente with the Russian government, of a new way in which we conduct ourselves overseas and abroad. It locked us in with the national security state, which was totally on board with all of this. And I think you can draw a direct thread from that to the Syria policy, to Afghanistan, to Iran, to so much of this, of what these people believe and how ingrained it is in them. And look, like, I'm not saying I like Russia. I don't like Russia, but I don't necessarily want to go to war with Russia either. And that's what a lot of these people seem to think whenever they're out there. Like, what other logical conclusion can you draw from such people's candidacies when they're putting things in such an existential crisis in the way that we're supposed to deal with the Russian government? And broadly, it just goes to show how much of an outright and utter conspiracy theory it is. And you know what? I think it's like birtherism for the left. Like, because I remember a lot of people on the right who were hardcore birthers also would use, the liberal media is going after me for saying that Obama was born in Kenya.
Right.
Give me money so I can stand up for them. Okay, well, this is basically the same thing. A completely outrageous and debunked conspiracy theory, which you went on national television in order to propagate. And now, what's happening? You're using the fact that people are rightfully calling you a straight-up hypocrite, not being able as evidence for why you are an effective opponent against Trump.
I remember watching, the right from my vantage point, mostly at MSNBC during the Obama years, and watching how, led astray by media personalities, some of them including Donald Trump, they had developed this completely caricaturist view of Obama that was not actually a critique of his policy, which is the sort of thing we critique here and the ramifications of that. It was just based on this fantasy image of him as a uniquely evil human being who wanted to destroy America and all this stuff. And there was no conspiracy that was too outlandish for people to believe, like these chain emails, all this stuff. I mean, smart people in my life who are well-educated and very intelligent would send me this stuff. I'm like, how do you believe this? And I thought it was insane. And the same thing with Hillary Clinton. Nothing was too crazy for people to believe. And now I see the same exact thing happening on the left, where there is no theory that is too outlandish about Donald Trump that they wouldn't buy into, that they wouldn't believe. And it's in part because of the MSNBCs of the world, the Evelyn Farkas or whatever her name is, Clapper, Brennan, etc., leading them down this path, giving them permission to indulge in these histrionic fantasies really about the uniquely evil nature of Donald Trump. And it reminds me exactly of the way that the right went off the rails in the Obama years.
And you know what I'll say? It's more insidious because this time around, people at the highest levels of government, from Obama on down, all fed right into this thing. The mainstream media fed right into this thing. We're talking about a complete orchestrated, almost a state orchestrated effort in order to stoke an outright conspiracy
there were plenty of people in
lie.
Power who were stoking those fires back in the Obama years,
Actually,
too.
No,
but
not really.
Yeah, there were members of Congress
Trump
and
himself,
Trump and Fox News, et cetera. There was plenty of orchestration there as well.
I don't think the Hannity panel is comparable in any way to 2 years of MSNBC coverage. So, we have to admit it. This is far more insidious.
It is deeply insidious. I will definitely give you that.
All right. Next on Rising, Biden thinks an FDR-style presidency is needed for this moment. But could he lead an administration capable of radical social change? Our conversation with FDR expert Professor Harvey J. Kaye when Rising returns.